Coming up in this episode.
What it did for me after all my own spiritual searching through all the different religious traditions is it finally helped me to be at peace with myself, to see my patterns of my life. They're building blocks, and it's up to us to choose how we want to play this out. We always have free will and how we want to play this game. The best advice I can give is to live your life like it's your favorite game to play.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for being here once again for this episode of Here for the Truth. I'm Joel Rafidi, got my co-host Yerasimos with me as always. And today we see the return of Alexander Dunlop, who first joined us on episode 51 over 3 years ago at this point in time. And he is someone who has contributed greatly to the, ancient esoteric system of cardology, if we can call it that, as an overarching umbrella. But basically, it's the way that it's a deeper understanding of playing cards beyond merely being playing cards, the esoteric significance they hold, how they can impact you based on your birth information, and what keys they might be able to unlock for one's life path. This is a fascinating conversation. This is a topic generally of self-knowledge and esoteric systems, which, really tickles us and has for a long time. So we love getting down and deep into the minutiae of a system like this. So no doubt you're going to enjoy this episode. If you do enjoy this podcast, one simple way to give back to us would simply be to hit that follow button wherever you're listening, be it Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else. And if you want to go a step further, leaving a review on either of those platforms would be amazing. And with all that being said, here is Alexander Dunlop. Alexander Dunlop returns for the first time since January 2022, where he first joined us on episode 51, discussing the esoteric secrets of playing cards. Brief introduction to Alexander. For those that haven't listened to that episode, he studied philosophy at Harvard and worked as a Wall Street consultant, but a spiritual awakening set him on a quest through every religious tradition and esoteric system until he discovered the meaning of life hidden in the real meaning of the deck of playing cards. Today, he helps high-achieving seekers align with their soul's blueprint, up-level their game, and fulfill their soul's destiny. As the best-selling author of Play Your Cards Right, a sacred guide to life on Earth, Alexander teaches how the ordinary 52-card deck is actually an ancient book of spiritual initiation, what he calls the sacred technology of the soul. Alexander, welcome back to Here for the Truth, man. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's great to be here.
I mean, I have to vouch for you. I was a client 12 years ago. So, I think my life has turned out pretty well. So thanks for the support that you gave me so many years ago.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a pleasure to work with you, and thanks for believing in me. You were one of my first clients in my long-term coaching program. You took the risk. You took the plunge.
Well, it's really cool. And I don't even know if I told this in our first episode, but I remember I was having dinner with a friend, Liz, and I had just gotten an astrology reading. And then she goes to me, she's like, you got to go see Alexander. He does reading based on playing cards. And I was like, what? Like playing cards? Like, poker? And she goes, yeah. And so I said, sure, why not? And then I came to see you and we had that single session and you went over 3 main cards. And it was really profound. It really highlighted so much, not just the positives, but also like the things that I need to be concerned about and some of the potential kind of lower, expressions of the 3 main cards. So yeah, I'm really grateful. And it's been a system that I share and talk about often. And so, yeah, man, great to have you back on. And I love the work that you're doing in the world.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I love that you got the King of Clubs representing behind you on the wall, as you are born to play the King of Knowledge. And here you are, teaching knowledge, spreading the love.
Yeah,
it's been fun, man. It's been
King
fun.
of Clubs, but just not the King of Backgammon right now.
We love our battles.
That's funny. That's great.
How do you want to kick this one off, Yerasimos?
Well, I know we went into your story in the last one, and we got into a whole bunch of different conversations and subjects, but I really want to dial in on the deck of playing cards. Okay. So If someone were to ask you, what is the real meaning of the deck of playing cards? How would you answer that question? And feel free to go into as much detail as you want.
Great. So since I'm wearing the shirt that my wife recommended me to wear today for this episode, I think that's a good place to start, because what comes to mind when you say that is I'm going back to the first time I ever met her, when she was sitting alone at a cafe, and I walked up to her and started chatting her up. In my nervousness and my excitement, the first thing that I did after we said hello and I realized that she actually wanted to talk to me and didn't think I was just being a jerk, the first thing I did was I spit out, well, did you know that the deck of 52 cards, it represents the seasons and the cycles of life on Earth, and there's 52 cards in the deck, 52 weeks in the year, there's 4 suits and 4 seasons, 13 cards in each suit, 13 weeks in each season, and then when you add up the numbers of all the cards, you've got the ace is worth 1, the 2 through the 10, the jack, queen, king are worth 11, 12, 13. So you add up the spot values of all 52 cards, you get 364. And then the joker is the 5th element in the 4-part system, and his mathematical value is represented as the fraction of 5/4, or 1 1/4. You add him back to the deck, you get 365 1/4. It's a calendar. It's a mathematical calendar of our solar year. And she's just looking at me like, the fuck is this guy?
Dude, I literally explain it in the same exact way because I learned it from you, like pretty much word for word, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually had on my business card printed that explanation. And when I met her, I handed her my business card, and I was reading off my business card to her in the cafe. And she talks about it afterwards. She was like, just looking at me like, what is going on here? But she was interested enough that obviously she stuck around. But that was how I first introduced it. And the reason I had the business card printed with the mathematics on it like that is I had another client tell me that's what you need to lead with. You need to tell people about the math first. That's what gets people really interested. Like, wait a minute, this maps exactly to our calendar and is an exact map of the sun going around the earth. So that's the lead-in that I had printed on my business card, and maybe is a great place to start for the show today to talk about those simple mathematical basics. It is a representation of seasons and cycles of life on Earth, and it's as old as anything we know, and we can get into that too. You know, like all origin stories, it gets a little murky back in the origins, but I have some theories about it, where it comes from. But in ancient times, books didn't have bindings. Like, books of the Bible were written on scrolls and parchment. They were still called books. Interestingly enough, today with electronic books, it's still called a book, even if you don't actually have the book in your hand. There's no binding whatsoever, but we still think of it as a book. In ancient times, these 53 loose leaves, actually 54 because there's 2 jokers, would have been known as a book. And it's a book that represents the seasons and cycles of life on Earth. It was known as the Book of Life. That's how it was known, as what I believe in my own research, that this deck, quote unquote, of cards was actually known as a little book of our life on Earth. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and interestingly enough, the way the Roman Catholic Church chose to persecute this information was they referred to it as the Devil's Bible, or the Devil's Picture Book. So even there was still this idea that it was a little book, but it was a book of the devil. So that was the choice words that the Catholic Church had for it. And what I've encountered in talking to a lot of people now, I've been doing this work since 2011, so whatever that is now, 14 years at this point. Surprisingly to me, what still comes up for people, even in the background, even among people who are spiritual seekers, is this kind of subtle apprehension or fear of like playing cards. Like, ooh, I don't know about that. And even your response earlier, Yerasimos, it was a little more of like a curiosity and an intrigue, but it was still like this, like, what? Playing card? And I think that's because the propaganda of the Roman Catholic Church was so effective that it has lingered deep in the collective psyche of the human consciousness, that there's this apprehension or like kind of, we look askance at it. We don't even know how to look at it. That's how deep I think the programming was effective.
I think also too, because they're so like deeply associated with like games and fun and play, and that like to think that they have this complete other meaning, like we've been so conditioned out of that. So I think that's what it was for me, as opposed to maybe like, ooh, I don't know, I don't want to get into the cards because I was into like weird stuff and esoteric stuff, but it was more just like, how many times have these, you know, pieces of paper or these cards been in my hand? How many games have I played? Poker, Go Fish, spades, hearts, gin, rum. I mean, everything. And then to be like, what? There's more? That was the cool part.
Yeah. But to your point, it's a very valid one in terms of like the religious propaganda around symbology, period. You know, I mean, I think with the second commandment is like, do not behold graven images or whatever it might be. You know, and so there has been this systematic war on like activating the right hemisphere of the brain, period, when it comes to obtaining information and wisdom via images. It's the same issue that people have with the tarot.
Well, exactly. And it's a threat to the authority of the church and any religious institution that we might have access to information directly, or tools that we can utilize to directly inform our consciousness that completely bypass the hierarchy and the authoritarian centralized structure. No wonder that they tried to stamp out any alternatives, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into a bit of the minutia here. But I do want to mention to people, if maybe you want to pause the episode at this point in time, go to your website, which is thesourcecards.com, figure out your cards, and then keep listening as we dive into maybe the different suits, different things, etc. This might be a different experience for you for this particular podcast. But should we dive into maybe the general meaning of suits now?
That's a great idea. And I love your suggestion, and I appreciate the shout out. That's a great idea that you have, Joel. For people, pause the episode, go to thesourcecards.com. There's a free lookup right on the homepage. You can put in your birthday and find out your two main cards to play. And then we've created this wonderful free resource where you can look up the meaning of your cards on the website for free. And that's part of our mission, to give this information away to humanity. We want to elevate human consciousness. That's what my wife and I are all about. As we kind of referenced with the way that information was suppressed, we want there to be a revelation of information. We want this knowledge to come out for everybody. So you can go to the website, look up your first two cards, and get started with that. And then you're right, Joel, the rest of the episode may take on a completely different tone when it's no longer a theoretical discussion, because it really is about our lived experience. And that's the only way that the truth of these cards or any esoteric system would ever mean anything to anyone, is when you live it out in your life and you see it played out in your day-to-day. That's how you know it's true. Because that's another question I often get is, well, how do you know it's true? Well, you know it's true because you live it and you experience it, and you start to see that these patterns really do recur and play out in your life. And then when you start to see them, then suddenly the good news is you have a choice. You're no longer just a quote unquote victim of your fate. You're no longer just mired in these recurring patterns that you can't seem to do anything about. When you have the mindfulness, the consciousness, the awareness to see the patterns, then you're free to make a different choice with the patterns. You're free to play them differently. And that's the real benefit of it.
Yeah. I love that we're all, I mean, obviously self-knowledge is very important for all of us. And, you know, it brings me to one of my favorite quotes that's attributed to Aristotle. I don't know if he really said it, but it's attributed to him. And I know it relates to his work, but it's knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And so the cards or other esoteric systems like this really shine a light on our consciousness and allow us to stake our flag in the ground and know ourselves. And then, you know, what comes from that? You know, how does our life unfold when we know ourselves on such a deep level? So yeah, man, keep going.
Oh,
yeah, for sure. So in terms of diving into the minutia, I guess a good place to start, let's start with the four suits, because those are the building blocks. So the suit of hearts, obviously enough, represents the heart, the emotional body. The club represents the mind, and the club is a clover. And the clover, if you look it up, is a nutritious weed, which seems like a really appropriate metaphor for the brain, for the mental activity. It can be like a weed. It can overgrow. We can have the monkey mind going nonstop, but it's also nutritious. We can feed ourselves with our thinking, and we create worlds with our thoughts. Everything in our world starts with a thought. The indoor plumbing, sliced bread, the internet, this computer that I'm talking to you on, it starts with an idea. Someone had an idea to create it. So our thinking can definitely be nutritious in feeding us and creating our world. The diamond, I'm pointing at my gut, you can't see it. The diamond represents the lower Tantien in that kind of esoteric system. It represents the gut. And it's the hardest known physical substance that we have on Earth, the diamond. And so it's a perfect symbol for all the vibrations of life that have hardened into a material form. To a rational empiricist, this is the only dimension of reality that's quote unquote real. Only things that can be measured are considered real. But it's actually only the diamond layer of reality. If you can see it, taste it, touch it, or smell it, it's a diamond. Anything with your five senses that you can perceive belongs to the material domain of reality. You can't see your thoughts. You can't see your feelings. If you can see it, taste it, or touch it, it's a diamond at that level of symbology. The spade is an acorn, and in some medieval decks, they were acorns that were represented for that suit. And the acorn classically is a symbol of the pineal gland. Like the Pope has an acorn on the top of his staff, and there's an acorn statue, I believe, in St. Peter's Square outside the Vatican. Classically, the acorn has been used as a symbol for consciousness and symbolizing the pineal gland. And it's a very interesting symbol because the whole oak tree grows out of this tiny acorn. So you have this tiny little seed, and out of it flowers an entire tree. It's an interesting symbol in that way because as human beings, who we are flowers from the first belief that we have. What we believe then is the foundation of everything else that we are. What we feel, what we think, and what we experience in our material domain starts with what we believe. It's our beliefs that define our reality. So this spade further symbolizes the fact that we ourselves are a holy trinity. We are three-in-one beings. We're not just a mind. We're not just a heart. We're not just a body. We're all three in one, and it starts with our belief about who we are. That's the starting point. That's the seed that gets planted. Or to change the metaphor, that's the aperture of consciousness through which we see everything, including, obviously, ourselves. And as we know, if we believe a medicine will heal us, it will. That's the placebo effect, and that is the power of our beliefs to define our experience. If we believe that substance over there will change this body here, it will. That's how powerful is our beliefs. So that's what the suit of spades symbolizes, is the domain of beliefs, consciousness. And these four building blocks, spades, hearts, clubs, diamonds, represent the totality of our lived experience, of our being on this planet in our space-time matrix. And then from there, we have within each suit the 13 striations or the 13 variations.
I'm just curious, Alexander, before we go on, can elements be ascribed to the suits at all? If we think about the four elements?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. We can absolutely do that. Now, here's where there is a little bit of controversy because some people have different ideas of what the heart or club, mind energy represents. I'll tell you what I believe, and I'll tell you what I think about it, and we can talk about how it resonates or different perspectives on the elements as they relate to these four suits. So here's what I've come to over my own studies, that the suit of hearts is represented or is reflected in the element of fire. And one of the reasons among many that I come to that conclusion is from the various religious traditions that talk about lighting a candle, and the candle flame is symbolically representative of the heart. And you want to light the fire of your heart like lighting a candle flame. And the suit of spades is represented by the element of air. And in the Vedic tradition, the idea of prana and breath is connected to consciousness. In the Kabbalistic tradition, which is one of the oldest traditions, the teaching is that it's the breath of God that lights the candle flame of the heart. They literally teach that. So in that old tradition, there too, we see the same correspondence of consciousness is the element of air and heart is the element of fire. Clubs then is the element of water. And the reason I came to that conclusion is through my study of Buddhism, where Buddha equates quieting the mind with quieting the waters. That talks about settling the waters of the mind, and that's a recurring theme in his teaching. And then in Christianity, in the baptism, the water is the elemental symbol of baptism when a child or an adult is baptized. And what's really going on there in a baptism is you're being initiated into the dogma, into the thoughts, the Holy Trinity and the Nicene Creed and the dogma, the words of the church. So it's interesting that the element used to correspond with that initiation into the thought forms is the element of water. And then further to think about it, that the mind, like water, does change shape and goes from, liquid to solid. And it's those solid thoughts that then form our material world, the diamond energy, the diamond layer of reality, where the element of diamonds is earth, matter. And it is our thoughts that directly impact and make our material world. And so the way I've come to think of it is that there is a process and there's a whole sequence where it's obviously all related, where it starts with the belief, which is air, which is the lightest, most ethereal, non-touchable substance, the air that, as the Kabbalists say, feeds the candle flame of the heart. That heart energy is like a generator that is like a steam engine that generates the steam of the thoughts. So thoughts are like the steam that come out of the heart. And the way I think about that makes sense to me, is that if you're feeling happy, you're going to have happy thoughts. If you're feeling sad, you're going to have bitter, resentful thoughts. So our thoughts really are determined by our emotional state. Whatever we're feeling is going to determine the kinds and the quality of the thoughts that we have. And elementally, I think of these thoughts as like water, steam. And then the steam can, whatever that word is, transubstantiate into liquid and then into solid. So it's liquid and it's molten, it changes shape, and finally to a solid form where then it materializes as a material form. So that's the way I understand the elements and the process of creation. So
Cool, man.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you go, man.
Oh, sure. If you want. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess the way I understand the esoteric tradition, like traditionally, is like, water would be emotions, so on the nose, when I first look at it, I would correlate hearts with water. And then air is traditionally mind. So I would think that clubs would be air. And then, diamonds definitely feels like earth. The most obscure one when I first heard it was spades. Like traditionally speaking, fire is like drive and energy towards something to like bring something into reality. So I'm not exactly clear on spades, but that's where fire would fit. But I like your interpretation too, man.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, what you're talking about is the traditional kind of way of looking at it that I know of in the esoteric kind of new age world. Do you want to say something? I have a thought to say, but do you want to?
No, I was going to say the same exact thing. Like, you would think traditionally a lot of people talk about the mind as the air, but it is interesting as the water. And I think I've heard you, I don't know if you wrote it in your book or somewhere, where it's like a fountain that's kind of like gurgling or whatever. It's like, that's what's going on in our mind all the time. Thoughts are just kind of bubbling up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, as I explained it to you, I referenced these different religious traditions, because that's where I grounded my own research. And that's also a reflection of my background. I studied religion. I went to seminary and I have a master's degree in religious thinking. And so I have that background. So when I found the cards and when I came into the more esoteric new age dimension of thinking, I had that as an underpinning for me and background. I will say this is my interpretation of why people think that emotions are watery, is because they overanalyze their feelings. That's my interpretation of that. And almost everybody, I mean, like 99.9% of people overthink their feelings and overanalyze their feelings. So if we're projecting thought energy, overanalyzing onto our feelings, then it would make perfect sense that we would think that our feelings are watery. That's my perspective on that.
Got you. Yeah. Where it comes from for me is just purely ancient symbology. I mean, even to reference the tarot, like cups are emotions, and in all the cup cards in all the tarot decks across the years, are highly emphasized with water as water fills the cup, etc. But yeah, man, it's all interesting to contemplate for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling very watery contemplating all this, actually.
Well, what I was going to say when I was starting with that, however, it's very interesting that when we're feeling emotional, we get teary. There is water connected to our emotions.
Yeah.
So there is something watery directly connected, and we can get into this too, that every single day of the year is a card to play.
Yep.
Like today is the Four Spades as we're recording this. I have noticed that on heart days, it does rain often. So there is definitely some watery connection to feelings.
You go. I was gonna say,
Well,
even in the
I
Greek
speculate
pantheon,
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Greek pantheon, Poseidon, I think, is like, lives in the ocean, and emotions are kind of like in his realm, so it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and since hearts represent our heart and our heart's pumping blood, our blood is liquid.
Yeah.
It's like liquid molten lava. There's something there where it's both fire and water simultaneously.
Cool.
All right. So we have the foundation of the suits. What is the next building block here?
Well, the next building block is the numbers and understanding the numbers of what they mean, 1 through 13. But before I do that, I feel like let me give a little more background on just kind of the mechanics of it.
Sure.
That it's based on the date of birth. So similar to astrology, it's based on the day you're born, but it's not the time of day. It's just the numbers, which is often something that can trip people up. I know it did for me a little bit. I was skeptical, like how can it all just be based on numbers of the date? Like today, for example, May 2nd is a 4 of spades day with a 10 of diamonds personality. And everyone born on this day has those cards to play, plus the whole life path of the 4 of spades. You have 13 plus cards in your life path that show you the different aspects of your life, relationship patterns, financial patterns, health patterns, shadowy patterns, life lessons, and so on. So you have a whole life path of cards. Everyone born on this day has the same life path. And so people are like, well, how can that be? How can everyone have the same life path? And the answer is that you have free will. You have free will to choose how you play out these cards. You are literally playing a hand of cards. And people with their own free will make very different choices with the same themes, but the themes will be the same. And then the other question is, well, how can it all be based on the Gregorian calendar? Isn't the Gregorian calendar an artificial construct? I get that question a bit too, as a foundational question, since we want to talk about foundations. And my answer to that is, I don't actually have rationally, logically, a great explanation of how it could be all based on a Gregorian calendar that arose in the Middle Ages and appears to be strangely asynchronistic, and the names of the months don't correspond to the actual months. October is an 8 in the Roman, but it's the 10th month, these kind of things. And why does it actually start on January 1st? If we're going around in a circle, then that's an arbitrary starting point. These kinds of things that come up, and certainly came up for me. The way that I answered that for myself was when I was invited to teach in China many years ago by now. Gosh, that was probably like 2014, something like that, 2015. I was invited to teach a workshop in China by a woman who'd heard me teach another workshop. And she translated in the workshop. And the first night we had like an open call. Anyone could come. She wanted to get people interested. So anyone could come. It was free to come and kind of get to know me and get to know the cards. And people would get up and ask questions at the microphone. It was a full room, probably 100 people. And this one woman got up to ask a question and didn't know her Western birthday, air quotes. That's what they referred to it as. They only in China, many of them know their lunar calendar birthday. So this woman wanted to ask me a question, but didn't actually know her Western birthday to ask me a question. So then she and the translator calculated it and kind of on the side and figured out what her quote unquote Western birthday would be. And so then once they knew that, then she proceeded to ask her question in Chinese to the translator. Translator translates it to me. I then answer her question based on her cards to play on her Western birthday that she just found out 5 minutes before. I answer the question for her and tears start streaming down her face. That's how accurate it was. It blew her away and tears start streaming involuntarily down her face. It was after that that I realized, even though I can't rationally explain why it's based on the Gregorian calendar, it just works. Mm-hmm. It is somehow, even for people who don't even know that that's their birthday, it still hits home. And so that's a subject for further exploration, further mystical understanding of why it could all be based just on the dates of the Gregorian calendar. But now, having done readings for tens of thousands of people over the years, knock on wood, it's always accurate. It always hits home for people. So that's just kind of the basic foundation for people to understand who are listening, that it's all based on your birthday. And it's based on this Western calendar system, but somehow still accurate for people all over the world. And then you're assigned, based on kind of like numerology, esoteric calculation, you're assigned a birth card based on your day of your birth. And then, as I said, you have a whole life path of cards from there.
And that original like life path, or like the first deal of the deck, where does that come from again?
Yeah, that's another great foundational question. So here, without visual props, it's a little challenging for me to explain, but I'll do my best. So here's one of the reasons why we know that this information is ancient, is because all the information, all the pip patterns on the faces of the cards, if you have a deck of cards at home, there's shape of the pattern of the 8, of the 7, the 6, the 5, the 4. These are shapes. These are visual shapes. All of those shapes come out of the tree of life, the spheric placements on the tree of life, traditionally thought of as the Kabbalistic tree of life, but the tree of life actually predates Kabbalism. So all of the visual symbolic patterning comes out of the tree of life, which comes out of the flower of life. And the flower of life is the oldest known religious symbol that we have, and it's found all over the world, cross-culturally. So that's one of the reasons why we know that this information has to be ancient, is because the patterning all comes out of the tree of life and the flower of life. The reason I'm mentioning that, to answer your question, Yerasimos, is that from that tree of life, we actually have a tree of life of cards to play. I have it behind me. You can't quite see it. If I raise my hand, maybe my camera will go up there.
Oh yeah, your auto camera. There you go.
Auto camera. That patterning is the same geometric shape, the same proportion as the tree of life, as people might know it, as the Kabbalistic tree of life. From the layout of the cards on that tree of life, when we find your birth card, once we calculate it based on your birthday, we find your birth card in the spread of the tree of life, this tree of life, then we read right to left as in Hebrew, and we read those 13 cards. Those are the 13 cards of your life path.
Now, a short break from the episode.
What's up, everyone? Hope you're enjoying this episode with Alexander. If you want to go a little deeper into exploring your personal cards, in our membership community, Friends of the Truth, one of the topic threads in our private Telegram group is delegated to human design, astrology, source cards, and other esoteric systems. So come join us. Ask any questions you have about your cards. I love this system. I love getting into it. I love sharing this knowledge. And come connect with our community. You can go to www.hereforthetruth.com/FOTT to join. We have 5 calls a month. There's a whole bunch of other things going on there, and we just love to hang out with you.
Back to the episode.
Yeah, I know you did like a more in-depth training in our membership community, or training, I would say, presentation on like the more esoteric origins, covering the Tree of Life in Friends of the Truth. So that was really cool. It was a couple of years ago. Anyways, where shall we go next? Because I love creating this like foundation so people can really just be like, wait, what do the symbols mean? What do the numbers mean?
Right. Well, let's go through the numbers then. That's a place to go.
Yeah, I just want to throw a quick note out as I did a little bit of research on the Gregorian calendar question. And like, the answer that's coming back is like, it mirrors the solar year, not necessarily the Gregorian calendar structure, but rather the natural solar cycle around which the Gregorian calendar is imperfectly built. And so the idea is that the deck reflects archetypal patterns present in the human experience, regardless of what we end up calling the day, ultimately,
I like it.
Yeah.
Was that an AI answer?
That was an AI answer.
AI is going to be our best friend. I know people are scared about it, but it is going to be our best friend.
I'm not scared of AI, man. We always have the technological alarmists, like throughout every single new innovation, like with computers, the internet, whatever it might be. It's like, at the end of the day, man, it's your intention in relating with something. Some people are going to, fall into traps in terms of how they relate to a piece of technology. Other people are going to create magic and wonders and thrive as a result. So you matter so much more than it.
Yeah, totally. And real quickly, Alexander, as kind of AI just kind of got thrust into, our life, it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Did you notice like the patterning of the cards, like maybe like 52-day card or yearly card where you saw like something like this could occur? Were you tracking that or not?
Oh, it's tracking the emergence of AI? Not specifically.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But that's a good kind of pin to point to that. I feel like we're at our infancy in understanding what this system of knowledge can reveal to us. I didn't and wasn't able to track that. However, the Mayans did have a 52-year calendar, interesting number choice, where they tracked 52-year cycles. And so if we were to know what those 52 years correspond to the cards, then we could track, oh, this is an Ace of Clubs year. We can expect emergence of new knowledge. Or this is a Seven of Hearts year for the collective. We can expect an emotional flip-flop for the collective. I have some theories on that, but I don't have the answer as to exactly how to map the 50 years. But it's interesting to me that the Mayans, which are the descendants of the civilization of Atlantis, had many calendars, and one of them was a 52-year calendar. That's a fascinating synchronicity. So I say that because once we know more about how to map our reality with this ancient knowledge that was hidden in plain sight, then we may be able to do something like that and predict each year more accurately what's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. Before we leave the topic completely, do you want to share your basic thoughts on AI? It seemed there was a spark of passion there for you.
Yes. Well, I knew about ChatGPT now since whenever it came out. I lose track of time, but when it was a couple of years ago that it came out, and I was kind of playing with it a little bit. My wife and I hired a business consultant, and the business consultant basically showed us, like, this is what she was doing. She took our web pages, copied and pasted them into ChatGPT, and asked for marketing feedback on our website. And we were blown away by what it brought back. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So my wife loved working in ChatGPT so much to get answers for what our emails are going to be, what's our next steps, and, social media reels, write us a 90-second reel for Instagram. So I bought her a t-shirt that says ChatGPT is my new best friend. Because that's what she says. She's like, this is my new best friend.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's funny. It's interesting. What I have started to do is put all my content. We purchased the ChatGPT Teams, which supposedly keeps your data proprietary and private. That's what they say. So there's the free version, then there's the personal version, then there's the business version. So we got the business version, and I've been feeding everything I wrote over the last 13 years, which is a lot. I have thousands of pages of content plus dozens of classes. I've been starting to feed that into our proprietary ChatGPT and ask it for its analysis. And I've been blown away by the way in which it can assimilate information and cross-reference in ways that I hadn't even seen. What this means, given what I taught in that class, based on this report I wrote, based on what I said in my book, it can bring it all together and tell me a synthesized version of my own thought. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. Really interesting. So I'm very hopeful for it. And the other thing I will say that sparks me is it's so freaking friendly and like positive and validating. I'll write something in it. Like I'll be like, here's an email that I wrote that I want to send to my clients. Tell me your thoughts on it. And it'll be like, wow, Alexander, that is a beautiful, heartfelt, really touching, soul-inspired email you've crafted there. I only have some light suggestions to your already fantastic email. And then it'll give me its suggestions. I'm like, wow, I wrote a fantastic email. Thank you so much. So my theory, and I posted this on Facebook and I got mixed responses to this. My theory is that interacting with ChatGPT or any AI is actually going to make us more compassionate human beings, because we're not going to tolerate anything less over time. We're not going to tolerate anything less than someone being really affirming and validating back to us.
Yeah.
We're going to let someone tolerate any kind of negative talk.
Yeah.
We're just not going
to. The flip side of that is like once they start having AI like sex dolls and stuff, it's like people are going to be like, I don't need to interact like with real humans because I have this like silicon doll that tells me I'm so amazing and I'm a great lover or whatever. And it's just like, you just have to be mindful. There's that fine line. And at the same time, I totally kind of dig what you're saying.
Wow, Gerasimos.
Your mind goes, Gerasimos.
Well, you read articles on this shit. Like you go on Facebook and then for some reason your news feed has like Vice articles about like crazy shit going on in the world. I'm like, what? This exists?
I'm not seeing those articles.
I haven't seen those articles. Those articles are not in my algorithm either.
No, neither.
I don't know. Maybe I have. I'm commenting or opening up the pages of tons of liberal, like uber liberal friends of mine. Maybe.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's certainly possible. I wonder. I mean, I don't know obviously where it'll go and what it could look like. But to your earlier point, Joel, it's all about our consciousness and how we choose to interact with it. It's a tool.
Yeah.
And we can misuse it, and it could be like nuclear weapons, and it could be like this cloud over our collective heads, where we could detonate a nuclear bomb and kill ourselves. It could be like that if we want it to be, depending on our own level of consciousness and how we utilize it.
Yeah. All right. So I want to eventually get into like some public examples of people's cards in the source cards. So do you think we can cover the numbers?
Let's do it.
All right.
We can certainly cover the numbers briefly. Of course, it's a deep topic, and I teach long courses on it, but we can cover it briefly so that people get an idea. So the ace is the number 1, and the 1 is the number of beginning. Whoops. It's also the number of being the best, like you cross the finish line first. The ace is the beginning and the end. It's the alpha and the omega. It's the starting point. So if you're born to play an ace energy of all 4 suits, you're here to initiate something and master it and develop your mastery, that you aced it and you proved that you could finish this thing that you started. Mm-hmm. The 2 is the number of connection and partnership. And we can see this in the symbology. You have these 2 pips opposite each other. And these are like hieroglyphs, Chinese characters. They tell the meaning in the symbolism itself. So the 2 is about connection and partnership, linking together. Because it's great that you started something, you initiated it, but we all live together on this planet. How can we join together, and how can we forge synergy and work together? That's the interest and the purpose of the 2. The 3 is about creativity, creating a new way. It's like 2, you can get a little stuck in the codependence, you get a little attached to the union and the partnership, too much so. The 3, it's like, let's create a new way. Let's break out of that simplicity of just mono connection one-on-one, and let's create something brand new. Let's go a new way. Let's cut against the grain. And that's what the 3 is. It's a straight line as the crow flies to create a new possibility. Anyone born to play a 3, that's your overall purpose in our collective harmonic, is to create a new way. The 4, if you look at the symbolism, and you can play along at home, as the saying goes, you can pull out the dusty deck of cards from your kitchen drawer, and you can look at a number 4, and it's a box. And so after the 3 has done its creativity, the 4 is about, well, how can we structure that? that's great. You created something, but we need to organize it. We need to structure it. We need traffic lights, red light, green light, so we're not killing each other at the intersections. We need to organize things. We need to put a fence around the playground so that the kids are safe to play inside. And that's the energy of the 4. And people who are born to play a 4, that's their role. They make great accountants or lawyers. They're here to help us with structures that we need in society. Then along comes the 5, and the 5 is symbolically an X, and it's like a crossroads. And like X marks the spot also of the treasure on the treasure map. The 5 energy is like, okay, great, you built that structure, but it's a little stifling. I need to break out of that box. I need a new adventure. I need to chart my own course across the horizon. I need to find a new vista. I need to explore. So the 5 wants to break out of that box. And there's a tension between the 4 and the 5. And we can see that played out on the world stage, even among political groups. Traditionally, although these traditions are totally breaking down right now, and the traditional left-right divide, I don't think is even there anymore politically. But traditionally, the 4 would have been like the conservatives who are like, let's keep things as they are. It worked for us. We got these traditions in place. Let's keep these structures. And traditionally,
The rule of law.
the rule of law. Traditionally, the 5 would have been the progressives and the liberals. Let's create new things. We need new laws. We need to include more people. We need to break out of these stifling traditional rules. That's the traditional way. Nowadays, that doesn't apply. But to help the listeners get an understanding of how the 4 energy and the 5 energy plays out, I give that example. So after the 5, you broke out in the box. You've got your adventure. You're exploring the horizon. Along comes the 6. And the 6 is 2 straight lines. The 6 is like, great, you're exploring, but we need to line it all up. You can't just go willy-nilly all over the horizon. We need to line things up, and you got to take responsibility, and you need to be accountable. So the 6 is all about lining things up. And anyone born to play a 6 has that interest and that purpose. What's justice? What is going to bring real peace? How can we line things up? How can we balance the debits and the credits of life on a grander scale, but also on the corporate balance sheet? So that's
Equilibrium.
What's that?
Equilibrium.
Exactly. Balancing the scales.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So then, okay, great. We got everything lined up. The 7 is about the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. And if you look at the number 7, you'll see that there's an uneven pip. It's not at the center. It's uneven. It's imbalanced. The 7 is about how can we pivot things? How can we adjust things? Okay, great. You lined everything up. Everything's all lined up. But you can get stuck in a rut with that. It can be monotonous. You need to be able to pivot and elevate and adjust and improvise. So that's what the 7 is about. How can we make it more beautiful? How can we liberate ourselves from this monotonous rut? How can we look at the intention of the law, the spirit of the law, and not just be stuck in the letter of the law? So that's what the 7 is about. And traditionally, the 7 is thought of as a spiritual number for that reason, that it's about transcendence and elevation. But in truth, all the 13 numbers are equally spiritual in our role, in our purpose, in our authenticity.
Yeah, the 7 being, I guess, the first prime number as well. So it's like that edge of uniquity where it's like, okay, let's do things differently, so to speak.
Exactly. And let's create a whole new possibility.
Yeah.
Let's transcend everything that we thought we knew or felt that we knew or imagined that we knew. And let's innovate it in a whole new way and make it aesthetically beautiful and spiritually uplifting. Mm-hmm. So you've done that with the number 7, and then along comes the 8 and says, okay, great. You've uplifted everything. You've adjusted everything in a beautiful way. Now we need to weave it all together in abundance. And the 8 is a figure 8. It's a symbol of infinity. How do we weave it all together? And that's the role of the 8. Anyone born to play an 8. How do we weave it all together to create the greatest abundance for all? And that 8 symbol is also the symbol of healing, as the 2 snakes woven around the caduceus. It's a symbol of healing. And that's very interesting to know. It was an interesting revelation for me that abundance is the same symbol as healing and well-being. Like for people who want financial abundance in their life and they're kind of chasing something in a kind of hustling harder, greedy sort of motif, they're missing the point that abundance is synonymous with well-being and healing and harmony. And that's the meaning of the 8, that grace, harmony, well-being, flow is the same as abundance, like electricity and water flowing in a fluid way. That's the number 8. Same as power. So that's the real meaning of power, where again, in our world, we have dissociated, unhealthy ideas of what power really is. Power is really harmony and flow and well-being.
Yeah. Congruence.
Congruence, exactly. So then the 8 has done its work, so to speak, people playing the 8 card well. Along comes the 9, and the 9 is the last single digit. It's the end. You've done it to the 9s. And the symbolism of the 9 is a ladder. If you're looking at a deck of cards, it's a ladder. And the 9 is like, okay, great. You've woven everything together. It's all abundant. It's all harmonious. And now it's over. You finished that chapter. It's time to begin again. It's time to let that all go and truly rise above, truly transcend all of that. And so traditionally, the 9 would be the path of like the spiritual aspirant or the aesthetic that would leave it all behind. And today, you mentioned real world examples. A lot of our kind of more famous on the world stage spiritual teachers are born to play a 9 card, like Eckhart Tolle is born to play the 9 of diamonds. Tony Robbins, born to play the 9 of clubs. Wayne Dyer, before he passed, 9 of diamonds also. The teacher Adyashanti, who teaches in the Buddhist tradition, he's born to play the 9 of hearts. So
Alexander Dunlop.
Thank you for the shout out. Also born to play the 9 of hearts. So our role is to help people let go of all of it and rise above all of it. And this too has, I believe, caused confusion for people about what spirituality really means. Because if the only people talking about how to live your best life are people born to play a 9 energy, then you could easily get the impression that, whoa, I need to copy their way of doing it. I need to leave everything behind as well. I remember seeing an earlier podcast with Russell Brand and Eckhart Tolle. This is before Russell Brand found Jesus in the corners of his silk blouse. This is before that happened, where he was still more open-minded and investigating. And he had this conversation with Eckhart Tolle, where Eckhart Tolle was teaching him about the meaning of life and on his podcast. And Russell Brand is born to play the King of Diamonds. We'll get to the meaning of the king in a minute. The king is here to command an authority, is here to be an authority to command a kingdom. That's what the king is here to do. So it's kind of more like roll up your sleeves, get in there and do the work and build your kingdom. And the King of Diamonds has a battle axe symbolically to chop down the trees and build the roads, build the schools, build the kingdom. But I was listening to Russell Brand, who's born to play the King of Diamonds, try to take in Eckhart Tolle's advice about let it all go, leave it all behind. And I could see him puzzling about how he was going to apply that advice to his own life, because it's not the right advice for someone born to play a King of Diamonds. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the ways that this toolkit of the source cards is so helpful, because we can see what's the right advice for your life based on your cards. So because the spiritual teachers, quote unquote, are often born to play a 9, that gives people, I believe, a false impression of what spirituality looks like. It doesn't have to look like letting it all go and going and living on a mountaintop. You can be just as spiritual, rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work of building a kingdom, because we need that. We need a healthy, functioning world around us. So after the 9, which is the final single digit, where we are letting go and rising above, no coincidence that we move to a higher decade. We move to the decade of the 10, 11, 12, 13, which is the royal court, which is the higher decade above the lower 9. And the 10 is a princess who did not get a face. The 11 is the jack or the prince. The 12 is the queen, and the 13 is the king. It's really interesting symbolically that the 10 is a princess without a face. Whenever I mention this to someone born to play a 10, they get it immediately, because the 10 energy can ever be in search of their face, their approval of themselves in the eyes of others. They're like the celebrity princess who's in a soap opera digest, continually acting out badly, trying to get social validation and approval. But the benefit of the 10 and the purpose of the 10 is to shine a light. They are the ones that shine the bright light. Wherever they shine their light, people pay attention, people look. So the role of the 10 is to shine a light of awareness, consciousness, thoughts, feelings on whatever they're interested in, and then the rest of us pay attention. And these are the people who naturally stand in the spotlight and gravitate to the spotlight. And more often than not, they hate the spotlight. They have a love-hate relationship with the spotlight. Personally, I'm a little jealous of the 10 because they just so easily gravitate to the spotlight. These are the people who will post a social media video and it goes viral immediately. And then they'll teach a course on how to make your video go viral, but neglect to mention that they're born to play a 10 so that they have that energy naturally of things going viral. A little card humor, source card humor that my wife and I joke about. Like, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that. Well, I love that. And in general, you see this out there in the world, in the coaching world, that's like, well, follow my formula, do things my way. And Joel and I aren't about that. It's like, you are an individual. You have to figure out what is your, appropriate way to do things, whether you're talking about the source cards or human design or any of these other systems. It's like, sure, you can receive inspiration outside yourself, but you have to come back within and figure out what is your way of doing things and how can you move forward in the world aligned with this blueprint. And so, yeah, I love these little stories and little anecdotes.
Yeah. So the other funny thing I was about to say is we used to watch Shark Tank religiously. We loved that show. And every single one of those sharks, when they tell their personal hero's journey, they talk about how they worked hard and they just rolled up their sleeves, just worked hard and they had a good work ethic. So then my wife and I would look up their cards to play, and they're all born to play an 8 energy or a 10 energy or a king energy, where the 8 is, again, about abundance, and the 10 shining in the spotlight, or the king being a master of what they do. But they didn't see that. There were massive blind spots, and they would only talk about how they worked hard, and that's how they got where they are. Meanwhile, of course, people can be working 3 jobs and be like in the working poor category of society. And it's not because they're not working hard. It's different cards to play. It's different life paths. And so, yes, there can be this kind of narcissism almost of, look at me, I did it because I worked hard. And then I come along like, no, actually, you rose to this position of success because it's energetically in your template that you would rise to this position of being in the spotlight or being an authority. But it's interesting, and I hope soon enough, whether through human design or any other system of knowledge, the source cards, that we start to recognize how unique we are and how different we are. And so then we can talk about it on that level, because what happens is people judge themselves, be like, oh man, they worked hard and they got to be successful. God, why isn't it happening for me? I'm working hard. So then people dwell in this kind of perpetual self-judgment, which is crushing. It's soul crushing to live in that space. So one of my bigger hopes is to help liberate people from that kind of self-judgment.
That compare and contrast game, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's finish up. Yeah. The Jack is the generator. He's the independent prince who does not like to be told what to do. I see Joel smiling because he knows when to play the Jack of Hearts. Jack is the generator. You're here to generate. The Jack is a symbol of Metatron's cube. That's the sacred geometry of the number 11. And that's another way in which we know this system has to be ancient, is that the cards actually represent sacred geometric patterns and the building, which we know are the building blocks of our reality. And the 11 is a symbolic representation of Metatron's cube. So if you're born to play the 11, which you are, the Jack, then you have all the building blocks of life at your disposal. All the platonic solids are in your energy field, so to speak. So you can create anything you want. You're a master at generating anything. The challenge for the Jacks is being a jack of all trades, but master of none, because you have so much at your disposal, so many tools at your fingertips. You can do so much. It's choosing to focus. that is the challenge for the Jack. And then when you do, you can generate new worlds. It's a world generating energy. You can literally regenerate our world. And it's also a youthful energy. I've noticed people born to play a Jack energy stay youthful throughout life. And this is another funny anecdote. I see like fitness gurus who are in their 70s, or maybe they wrote a book about how to stay youthful. And I look up their cards, and sure enough, they're born to play a Jack. I'm like, yeah, no wonder you're staying youthful. And now you're going to write a book about it. Anyway, but yes, the Jacks are here to generate. And it's the masculine counterpart of the 10, where the 10 is here to reveal and shine a light. The Jack is here to generate new forms. And it works together with the 10 energy. Well, I might be going too deep if I start going down that rabbit hole, but just enough to say that the 11.
I was like, please do. It's about me. Let's go.
You're good. You're good, man. Thank you.
We could go 3 hours on this podcast.
I really could talk 3 hours about the meaning of the 11 and the 10. But suffice to say that that's the role of the 11. And as we know from numerology, the 11 is a master number. So you're here to develop your mastery. And you do that by focusing on generating what you want to generate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like, obviously, in human design, I'm a generator as well. And even my birthday, like 2211, like they're both, synchronistic with that as well. The 11 appears 3 times there. So, yeah.
That's very interesting. And the 11, the other way to think of the 11 is that it's a double ace energy. It's 2 ones together. So the ace is about initiating and mastery. You have a double dose of that to initiate and master it for yourself. So what it means for people with the 11 energy is not to wait for anyone else to do it or to blame anyone else for why it isn't being done. Yeah. It's up to you to generate it yourself.
Yeah.
So
that seems to track.
Yeah. And you have all the tools to do it. So then we get to the 12, and the 12 is symbolized in the icon with a queen. And the 12 energy is like, okay, great. You generated this amazing thing. You generated new forms. The 12 is like, okay, how can we perfect it? How can we really really perfect it? And that's the energy symbolized by the queen. It's a feminine energy, which is really telling because that is a great clue as to what perfection looks like. It's not something you impose. It's not authoritarian, which is what we all experienced during the COVID years. Mm-hmm. It's not something you impose with a centralized kind of dictate. Perfection arises organically in a receptive way. And the symbol of the queens is a flower. All the queens have a flower in the cards. And again, you can look at it in a deck of cards at home. It's about nurturing the flower. It's about advocating for the growth. It's about being patient with the development of whatever we're focused on, patient with the growth of it and nurturing it along. This is how we find perfection. It's also about seeing the perfection of what is in the moment, that whatever is perfect by definition of the fact that it is. That's the real role of the queen, is to help us all see that life right now, like a flower blossoming, like which part of the flower blossoming is perfect? Is it when it first gets the bud? Is it when it opens its petals? Is it when you smell the fragrance? Which is the part of it that's perfect? Well, it's all perfect. Mm-hmm. The whole process of a flower blossoming is perfect. And that's the real deeper meaning of the queen, is to recognize that reality is unfolding perfectly and to see that, to actually see that, and to not wish it to be anything other than what it is. That's the purpose of the queen, is to show that to us. Unfortunately, more often than not, queens get perfectionistic and demanding, and like in the Alice in Wonderland example, start proclaiming off with his head, because they do not suffer fools lightly. Anyone born to play a queen energy, they do not suffer fools. But that's the role of the 12, is to, in the whole collective scheme of our collective harmonic, is to show us that everything is unfolding perfectly, exactly as it is. And then we get to the 13, the final number, the king, symbolized by a king. The 13, symbolically, if you won't see this on a deck of cards at home, but I had a deck of cards printed. Maybe I can show it to your audience for those who have ability to see it. This is a 13 of spades. I had a deck printed with the 13 pip patterns restored. So like this is the 12, which typically would be known as a queen. Mm-hmm. The 13 this is actually a phi symbol, and that middle line is bisecting a rectangle. And that is the symbol of the way to play the 13 well, is to find that middle path. And that's actually a Chinese character as well. The symbol of the middle way is a line that bisects a rectangle in Chinese characters. And what that tells us, again, the visual symbolism of the patterns tells us how to play it well, is the right way to hold authority and power, to be a king, is to find the middle way. And that's a middle way that is between either extreme. And we could apply that politically right now and in our world in general. The way forward, the right way forward for all of us is to find a middle path, find a middle ground. It's not the right or the left. It's we need a middle path. And that's the true way to command our destiny, to command our way forward as a species on this planet. We are going to need to find the middle path. And that's the role of someone born to play a king, Gerasimos, to help us find the middle path. How do we take everything that's going on over there, everything that's going on over there, how do we synthesize that together, take the best out of both, and find a middle path that transcends and includes both different perspectives? You think that, we put them together, now we get this, and it includes your ideas, and includes your ideas, and it's going to work for all of us. That's what the king is here to do at their best. If they're not at their best, then they're ruthless, kind of comment. Yeah.
It's so interesting you speaking into that, like something Erasmus repeats often, as a psychological foundation is like being able to hold the tension of opposites, which is very indicative of that middle path. And I feel like it's a core essence that's kind of fed here for the truth.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting, Gerasimos, that you would intuitively know that about yourself, that is your role, is to hold the tension of opposites and find that path between both of them, because that is your role.
Very cool.
So we got.
Yeah, let me ask you. I want to ask you a question, Alexander. So, in knowing our, I guess, birth cards, can you give a brief, I guess, overview of synopsis of how you have seen what we've built kind of come into fruition as, as a symptom of who we are?
Well, let me also add there, Joel is a Two of Hearts personality card, aka planetary ruling card, and me as a Jack of Diamonds personality card. So
right.
You can riff on that for a little bit.
Oh, that's fun. I think we got into that a little bit on the last show, but so that would tell me, and I know you guys, so I know the backstory, but let's pretend I didn't know you. Let's pretend like I'm doing a reading and you guys come to me and ask this question. I would say, well, Joel, you're the heartbeat of the Here for the Truth. You're the one, because Jack of Hearts, generating the love, you're the one who initiates and generates the energy that gets Here for the Truth going. Like, you're the heartbeat of what you guys are doing. And then Gerasimos, your role is to hold that tension of opposites and to speak the wisdom of, well, we can look at it like this and we can look at it like this. But if we put it together and we look at it this way, then we find this third possibility that synthesizes these different ideas. So your role in this podcast would be to offer clarifying insights, to clarify, well, he said this and she said that, but we could put it together and we can find this when we put them together. So you would work well together and again, I'm pretending like I don't know you guys. You would work well together. Joel, you're initiating it. You're the heartbeat. You're generating it. You're putting the passion in. You're getting it all going. And then Gerasimos can come in and refine and fine tune and offer some wise, kingly insights.
Yeah, very, very astute. It definitely seems that way. Like in everything, like, it's like, I'm moving the ship forward and he's like just fine tuning the direction, so to speak. And that's actually reflected in other systems for us as well. Even like his Gemini nature, it's like that, editing kind of thing. And even in I think our Chinese astrology, you're like the monkey, right? And I'm like the horse. I'm like the horse.
All of these systems start telling us the same thing.
Yeah. So
it's like we have to pay attention at that point. Like, oh, okay, let me pay attention now.
Yeah, and some systems like focus on one element of it and other one. So it's like you can create this kind of interesting self-understanding, like kind of picking and choosing if you want, if you're into that. And I know that's like kind of my way of going. Like I like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Let's see how let's sprinkle that in there. So yeah, it's really cool. You know, there is truth to this. And again, it's like when it resonates with you, within you and you're like, fuck, this is wild. This like totally lands. And that's how I was with my first session with you, man. Like 13 years ago, I think now, or 12 years ago.
It still boggles my mind, even as we're talking about it, that this can be accurate. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like playing cards and based on birthdays. When I start to reflect on it deeply, it tells me that our reality really is an elegant mathematical construct that we still, as I mentioned earlier, are just in the infancy of understanding this beautiful, intelligently designed matrix that we live in, that we can talk about things in this way with each other. And it, as you say, it lands. It must mean that we are more intimately synchronized than we are aware of.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too with Joel and myself too, like his birth card is the Jack of Hearts. My personality is the Jack of Diamonds. And so there is that kind of Jack synergy there. So I know like there's a playfulness, a youthfulness to how we go about things. And even in our work, I think that it comes through. I'm sure people that have gone through Rise Above the Herd or who are in Friends of the Truth can probably, attest to that.
100%. And then so Joel's Two of Hearts personality card, which we do get by knowing the planetary ruler, that's how we calculate that. That Two of Hearts as your personality, Joel, I think I mentioned to you last time we talked, that makes you a great teammate and a great partner. It also means that that Jack of Hearts primary pattern wants to generate through partnership. So that Two of Hearts is how you want to generate.
Yeah.
So no surprise that you would seek out a partnership for your passion project, and you would really want to work with someone in a partnership because you know intuitively that that's how you do your best work, and that's how you're designed to succeed and flourish.
Yeah.
And my Jupiter card is the Two of Spades. So I know like a lot of like amazing things have come into my life through partnership.
Exactly. So you guys both in key positions have partnership as your mechanism, as your best way to operate. And you found that naturally, found it, intuitively, I guess you could say that that's what works for you guys. Yeah. And I see that often actually, that people kind of naturally gravitate to and figure out what works best for them. And then I look at their cards to play and I'm like, oh yeah, of course you chose to do it that way. Of course, that's what works best for you.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Recently you had a post, I think, talking about some key figures on the political stage at the moment, Trump, Musk, etc., and talking about their cardology. Might be a key point of interest for a conversation. You're going to take a look at that.
Yeah, because they're two of the most polarizing figures right now, and it's like so easy for like one side to ascribe like they're evil, they're the worst people on the planet, and then the other side be like they're the saviors of humanity. So it's like, the truth probably lies, somewhere not at the end of the extremes.
Classic.
Are you holding the tension of opposites right now?
I'm doing what I can.
So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Joel. I love looking at political figures, public figures through the lens of the source cards. It really helps me to cut through the fog and the propaganda on both sides or on all sides, because there's so much spin and wishful thinking and delusions and all kinds of things that get plastered on and thrown at these public figures. So I utilize the source cards to help me cut through all that. And one of the things that I realized about Donald Trump, and I've had a long journey, as maybe all of us have, with him. I didn't like him at first. I have been a registered Democrat my entire adult life. So I kind of had the natural knee-jerk reaction to him that I didn't like him at first. And I've now come full circle with him. And, I see him for what he is. He's a flawed human being. However, he's playing a Three of Diamonds. And the Three of Diamonds is the same birth card as George Washington. Donald Trump has the same life path, the same purpose, the same role as one George Washington. And not just George Washington, there are other political key figures in history like Che Guevara, who was also born to play a Three of Diamonds, who also led a revolution. The Three of Diamonds can be a revolutionary energy. I mentioned earlier about how the 3 is let's create our new way. Let's cut against the grain. Let's go straight. It's a straight line. And interestingly enough, Donald Trump outwitted and beat both political parties, first the Republicans in his own party, and then the Democrats. So I'm holding my fingers up to symbolize this 2 energy. As I said earlier, sometimes these 2 energy can get locked in a codependent, unhealthy tangle. And we saw that and we witnessed that on a macrocosmic level in our political landscape, where for many years, at least among my friends, we would talk about how, well, we have no good option in either political party to elect. It's like the lesser of 2 evils, always. That was the only option we had, because the Democrats and the Republicans are basically a mono party, both parties of war, both parties of corporate interests, not really interested in the people. It's always like, well, who's the lesser of 2 evils? Along comes Donald Trump, and he creates a whole new way. He totally disrupts this 2-party codependent tangle, and in my opinion, leads a peaceful revolution that points us in a whole, again, 3 energy. It's a straight line. It points us in a whole new track. Knowing that and being able to still witness his flawed human nature and the ways in which he still has some narcissistic bravado, nonetheless, I can see that he's pointing us in a whole new way. And that gives me hope. That actually makes me optimistic, especially knowing that it's the same energy as George Washington, creating a new pathway forward for us as a nation. Where George Washington was leading a revolution against literal tyranny, I believe that we were experiencing kind of a quiet, technological, in the background tyranny that really showed up. And a lot of people saw it during the so-called COVID pandemic. A lot of people woke up to the fact that, wait a minute, why are these authorities clamping down on us in this way and telling us we can't say this and we can't do that? To me, that was actually already endemic. It just kind of rose to the surface during the COVID pandemic. And so enough people are awake to the fact of, wait a minute, we were being suppressed and our freedom of speech was being systematically stripped from us. And we no longer had the human liberty that we thought we had. And our newspapers and our media were all controlled, as Noam Chomsky pointed out years ago. So we weren't even being told the truth. It was all propaganda. Along comes one Donald Trump with all his flaws, playing the 3 of diamonds to lead a quiet revolution. And that's how I see it. And that's how I've come, as I mentioned, full circle to see him. And it's by knowing that he's born to play the 3 of diamonds that I can pinpoint that and I can see through the fog and see through his flaws and see the deeper purpose of what he's doing.
Really cool, man. I mean, again, it's like, how can you look at someone and be like, there are a lot of things I don't agree with, but then there's also some stuff where you go, this makes sense. And seeing it through the lens of his cards, it definitely makes sense. So we don't know how it's going to turn out, how he's going to exercise his free will, what's going to happen. And at the same time, there's so many other factors at play. But just on that more micro level of who he is and what cards he's here to play, it's interesting to contemplate for sure.
Very, very, very middle path, Erasmus.
Oh my God.
This is going to be an ongoing inside joke, you guys.
But it is. I mean, it's funny though, because it is. If I think about like our conversations, there's always like, even if when you come to me with some stuff, it's very like, well, let's consider this, let's consider that. Like sometimes that can make me a little bit, I wouldn't say indecisive, but just like trying to kind of look at things from a lot of different angles. I mean, you do that as well, but I'm just saying it's just something that I tend to default on.
Yeah, generally, I'm probably a lot more polarizing than you are. Erasmus tends to think of everyone else and how they're going to respond to everything as well, which I think is part of that energy.
Yeah, I consider like potential scenarios, like if this happens and that can happen and that can happen, and if how do we bring it all together, and what's the most ideal way of communicating? Again, clubs. So it's interesting.
How do we put this into words, and how do we speak the truth with precision? That's the King of Clubs energy. And,
interesting, Alexander. Like all 3 of my daughters are clubs as well: Ace, King, and 10.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's your wife's? Oh, you told me your wife's card.
She's Ace of Spades.
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, let's move on to Elon Musk.
Yeah. So enough about Donald Trump. Oh, one more thing about him is that when I was writing that post and preparing that, I did a little research, and I was surprised to find that George Washington's contemporaries, like Thomas Jefferson, thought of him that he was kind of a hard ass. Well, this was the exact words. Thomas Jefferson said that George Washington was, quote, despotic in every respect, like a tyrant, that he was a hard man to know and he acted with hardness in everything that he did. And I think, oh, that's interesting. That's people's critique of Donald Trump, that he's, quote unquote, a fascist. Thomas Jefferson thought George Washington was despotic. So that's another aspect of understanding the cards to play. Again, being able to see through the fog and the fear and the propaganda, that in order to play a three of diamonds well, in order to really carve your course through different expectations and worries and fears, you do kind of have to be a hard ass. And the diamond is sharp. The diamond is a hard substance. And so you do need to be hard and sharp in order to cut your way forward. So that's another way in which I'm like, oh, no wonder. And that's, I can see it that way. And as I mentioned, the bottom line for me is that it gives me peace that he's playing his role. He's playing his cards to play. We don't need to fret. We don't need to worry. He is playing his cards. That's what's happening. And if someone is playing their cards, then that's the best we can hope for. As you mentioned, Yerasimos, we don't want to be trying to follow a one-size-fits-all model. I mean, we don't want to just try to copy someone else's way. When we're all truly playing our own cards for ourselves, or whether we're using human design or any other system to help us tune into what is our own true way, everyone is going to benefit automatically by definition, because we're going to be more in harmony with ourselves, and that's going to ripple out and then give permission unconsciously for everyone else to play their cards right too.
Well said.
So, okay, Elon Musk. Excuse me, I gotta clear my throat before I dive into this one.
Hey, just very interesting. You mentioned before the 5 was like progressiveness, right? Like in terms of political spectrum, which I guess can be related to like more like, social collectivism, so to speak, in a sense.
Yep.
I just did a quick search on what are the playing cards of Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. And Hitler's personality card is a 5 of hearts. Stalin's birth card is a 5 of clubs. Mao's birth card is a 5 of hearts.
Wow.
That's pretty wild.
That's wild, hey?
That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and non-traditional, breaking out of the box, breaking out of the traditional mores and values of society, and having their own, spinning out of their own like progressive ideas gone wrong because there isn't a solid foundation underneath. So then without that solid foundation, everything goes to hell.
Yeah.
Wild.
Very interesting. Where'd you find that?
My best friend.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta keep up with the AI. But yeah, so Elon Musk. This is a more interesting kind of. We need to kind of set the stage a little bit more for this one. So Elon Musk is born to play the 2 of clubs. That's his birth card, and the 2 again is about connection, partnership. How do we do it together? And clubs is mental, so verbal communication, language. Really interesting that he bought Twitter, which is all about, at its best anyway, being a public forum, being a public town hall place where people go to exchange ideas and talk to each other. I remember hearing him say that before he purchased Twitter, he was the largest user of Twitter. He had the most tweets of anyone. He didn't have the biggest following,
Wow.
but he had the most tweets of anyone. He was the biggest consumer of Twitter. So that's very interesting that he's born to play the 2 of clubs and he's consumed with communicating in a public forum. His personality card is the 7 of spades. So he would show up through this 7 of spades energy. And again, the 7 is about a pivot and an adjustment. Spades are consciousness, what we believe. So he would be very interested in how we up-level our consciousness. He wants to go to Mars, for example. He wants to up-level our reality. He wants to pivot our whole reality. Not just by doing something like going to Mars, but just up-level how we look at our reality in everything that we do. So how do we communicate together, and how do we pivot and up-level our reality? Now, here's where it gets interesting. I mean, that maybe already was interesting, but for me, where it gets really interesting. And here's another example of how this knowledge starts to get complex, even though it starts with simple building blocks. We can add together the values of the 2 of clubs and the 7 of spades. When we add them together, we get the 9 of hearts. It's a little bit more esoteric than maybe I can explain on a show, but I'll give you the quick and dirty of it. Each of the cards has a solar value. Like the 2 of clubs, so 1 through 52, you can imagine all the cards are 1 through 52. The suit of hearts, 1 through 13, the suit of clubs, 14 through 26, diamonds, 27 through 39, spades, 40 through 52. All the cards have a number value. When you add up the number value of the 2 of clubs and the 7 of spades, and then subtract from 52, you get the 9 of hearts. So the 9 of hearts is the synthesis or the synergy of these 2 cards. And that synergy card often shows us the output of what we're going to be doing when we play our cards right. So when Elon Musk is playing his cards right of the 2 of clubs and the 7 of spades, he's going to show up as someone who is a humanitarian, the 9 of hearts. He cares about humanity. He wants to uplift humanity. He wants to help humanity let go of the old baggage and stuff and stories that weigh us down, and help humanity step up to the next level of our humanity. Once I looked at that, I was like, oh, he really does care. So many people worried, is he going to steal grandma's Social Security? He's just in it for his tech bros to try to create a technocratic tyranny. All kinds of weird conspiracy theories people had about him, and maybe still do have about him, all his nefarious ulterior motives. When in reality, his energy, he wants to help. He really wants to uplift humanity. He wants to help us communicate better. He wants to help us pivot our consciousness. And he wants humanity to rise to the next level, to start a whole new chapter, to let go of our past and go into a new phase of our humanity. That's the 9 of hearts. I posted about that on Facebook, and I got mixed responses, but one woman who is a Vedic astrologer chimed in, and she said, that's really interesting, because in his Vedic astrology chart, he's genuinely a good person who genuinely cares. Like, oh, that's interesting. And totally different esoteric system confirms that he really is a humanitarian and he really does care. So that's my analysis of Elon Musk.
I'm waiting for the middle path commentary.
Well, after I say this, what part of his life path has him having like 14 children? For a second there, I thought he has like a King of Hearts somewhere or something, but I don't know.
That's funny. I'd have to look. I actually haven't looked that up. I'd have to look that up and see where I find that in his life path. But yeah, so we can look at the downside as well.
Yeah.
The downside of having 9 of hearts.
You're asking us. The king's like, yeah. Let's see the other side.
Yeah, let's look at the downside. Yeah, well, it's good because it's easy for people sometimes to listen to this and be like, oh, okay, but there's still potential for.
Of course.
And so, yeah, like
100%. So the cards can synergize positively or negatively. So when he's playing his cards right, he is a true humanitarian. When he's not, so the downside of the 2 of clubs is being codependent and gossipy and fearful. You're stuck in this kind of loop of continually questioning and talking about it. And the downside of the 7 of spades, when it pivots downward, is to be depressed and to be cynical about reality, to think the worst and fear the worst. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. So if he is playing his cards badly, which we all oscillate back and forth to different degrees, if he's playing that 2 of clubs badly and that 7 of spades spins downward, what would happen to him, that 9 of hearts, is betrayal. And he would feel like he got betrayed, and in an irrational way that makes no sense to him. And he may be feeling that right now. Like, actually, that may be his current state. He may be like, guys, I just wanted to help. I just wanted to do good. And now you're burning my cars and you're telling me all these negative things about me. So he may be genuinely depressed right now. We don't know. I don't know him personally. But the negative synergy of that 9 of hearts is you climb down that emotional ladder into your own private pity party where you feel like everybody wronged you and you got unjustly and unfairly betrayed. That would be the negative side for him.
Alexander, have you done the synergy card between the 3 of diamonds and the 2 of clubs for both, like the relationship card for Musk and Trump together?
I haven't. I'm going to do that right now. We're doing like a live action on camera. Let me calculate that. 3 of diamonds and the 2 of clubs. They're together add up to the 5 of spades. And 5 change, spades, consciousness. So together they would be change agents.
The 5 is bad.
Fives don't have to be bad. You don't have to become like a Hitler Mussolini figure, Stalin figure.
This is amazing.
But yeah, together, that's a great question. I hadn't looked at that. Together, they would be a catalyst for change. And they were when they rolled out Doge, and 5s can be too speedy, can move too quick. And I think that was part of the problem that for people is they rolled that out so fast that it took everyone's breath away. And that was part of the reaction to that. We can now say 5 of spades synergy, where it just moved too quickly. And it was breaking down old structures, old traditions, bureaucracies too quickly. They were too progressive in how they went about it. So maybe they could have taken it easy a little bit and moved a little slower. It might have helped with that, acclimation time for people to acclimate to what was really happening there.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And you're right, we could do that. That's for people listening at home. You can take the synergy of a relationship, and my wife and I have done that. We know our synergy card for our relationship, and that was helpful. We could do that right live for you guys. You want to do that?
Well, like,
quickly, I guess, what is that quickly for Jack of Hearts and King Clubs?
Oh, for you, the 2
it's actually,
yeah.
Well, first off, that's what I was going to say. Well, Sophie and I are the 8 of diamonds as a synergy card.
You know that already.
I know that already. Yeah, we're 8 of diamonds. I think Joel and I might actually be the Jack of Hearts synergy. I'm not sure.
You would be no.
I can't. I'm just throwing that off the top of my head. I have no idea if it's true.
No.
You know what it is? My synergy between I think, correct me if I'm wrong, my King of Clubs and Jack of Diamonds is the Jack of Hearts. I think.
That's right. That is right.
That's what it was.
Synergy is Joel's birth card. That's another connection you guys have. But your synergy together of your birth energy is the King of Diamonds. King
Empire.
of Business.
Empire, bro. Let's go.
You guys are building an empire.
HFTT Empire.
Let's go.
King of Diamonds, the downside is the one-eyed king. So you need outside counsel to help you guys.
Yeah.
That's the Illuminati aspect of our podcast. The one-eyed.
Yeah. So that's
no, it helps. It definitely helps when we have some outside support too at times.
Totally.
An outside mentor, an outside business consultant, business coach would definitely do you guys a world of good. And then King of Diamonds, you're together building an empire.
Amazing, man. Well, I've always said empire is the goal here, so I love to hear it.
It's in the cards. You already knew that intuitively. Do you want to know your synergy card with your wife?
Sure. Ace of Spades, Jack of Hearts.
Yeah, Ace of Spades, Jack of Hearts. Let me just calculate that.
41 plus 11. Okay.
Yeah.
Ace, I think.
No, it's 40 plus 11.
Oh, yeah, 40. So would that be 52 by 51 minus 51? Or would it be 51 minus 50? I forget how it goes.
So it's Queen of Spades. 51 is the Queen of Spades. So the Queen of Consciousness, it's about perfection in your relationship. That, you need to be patient, and you need to be patient with the process of your relationship, how it unfolds. I mentioned earlier about the queen energy to play it well is to nurture. You need to nurture your relationship. It's important for you. You don't want to be demanding or putting demands on the relationship. Both of you, this is for both of you because it's the synergy between the two of you. You both need to consciously nurture the relationship, consciously water the flower of your relationship.
Cool, man. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Appreciate that. There's something that we missed here in the numbers. And I want to get to it quickly.
But real quickly,
Right?
because I just want to hear his take on the eight of diamonds synergy between my wife and me. And
So
feel free to double check that, but it's the King of Clubs and Sophie's Eight of Hearts.
yes, so
I'm pretty sure it's 8 plus 26, right?
yeah, so that's right. So it's 8 of diamonds. So the 8 of diamonds is the alpha energy. It's a powerful energy. So that together you guys are an alpha couple. So when you show up together, it's more powerful than when you each show up separately. So like teaching as a team, for example, you would have more abundance and more financial reward, and you'd have more kind of acclaim and more status than you each would separately. It's about, for you personally, though, between the two of you, to be always aware of finding the flow. To be aware of the flow between the two of you. And it's physical, it's diamonds. So you may need to do physical things together and go for walks or gardening or things that you would do physically together to have that flow between the two of you. It's a powerful energy, so you want to be careful of the power dynamics in your relationship, like who's trying to overpower who. And the 8 is already a powerful energy and the King is already an authoritative energy. So between the two of you, you want to be aware of the power dynamics in your relationship.
Very cool. One quick thing I want to ask, because in the past, obviously I've been together with Sophie for 11 years and she's my Saturn card. And I know some people were like, oh, you don't marry your Saturn card. But the funny thing is we have like an inside joke. My Venus card is the 4 of Hearts. So she's like my double Venus. It's like 2 4 of Hearts. So that was kind of like a little joke we made of it. So I don't know, like your quick thoughts on that, because people can get caught up in, oh, they're my Saturn card. It's going to be challenges and we shouldn't be together.
I've seen that a lot. And one of the things that I'm very careful to say to people is I can't predict whether the relationship is going to succeed or fail, just what the dynamics are, just what the patterns are. And one of the things I've noticed often is true for people born to play the King of Clubs, especially for King of Clubs men, is you want a woman who holds you accountable. You want a woman who can speak to your thinking and not get like bowled over by your mental gymnastics or your mental acumen, or like you could try to talk people in circles. You want a woman who's strong enough to stand up to you, and that 8 of Hearts is that. And so also, if you're somebody who really wants to learn and grow, then you might want to marry your Saturn card, because your Saturn card will be your teacher. So your wife is your best teacher.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot over the last 11 years, so it tracks. Cool. Joel, you were going to say something real quickly?
We just never touched on the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Joker is an island unto himself. He is the 5th element in a 4-part system, so he stands apart from it. And that birthday is December 31st. And if you ever meet anyone born on December 31st, you may notice that they're a little bit different. They stand apart. And unfortunately, more often than not, when I've met people born to play the Joker card, they don't really know how to get their life together. They feel like an outsider in the game of life. I've met on some occasion people playing the Joker well, and people who are playing that Joker card well have extraordinary talent and ability. They have kind of like clairaudient, clairvoyant abilities as well. They can see beyond the ordinary time, because they do stand outside of the matrix. They stand outside of time. They have a very special role to play, which is to fill the cracks of reality. Where everything can be cracked up, they're the ones who see how it's cracked up and how it's all gone wrong, which is also why they suffer and get depressed, because they see everything that's wrong in our world. But their role is to be like the glue that holds it all together, that fixes it all up. That's when they're playing the role well.
I just looked up some notable Jokers quickly. Val Kilmer, Anthony Hopkins, Ben Kingsley. So
a lot of great actors, a lot of our best actors born to play a Joker, because they can impersonate anyone.
Did you say Harold Kumar? Is that what you said? What would you say?
No, Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. Val Kilmer and Anthony Hopkins are two. I think it's Harold Kumar. I was like, what's going on? Like, what? But Val Kilmer and Anthony Hopkins are two of my favorite actors, hands down.
Alexander, thank you so much, man. It's been such a pleasure to host you again. I guess in closing, any parting message for our audience, and also please direct them to, how they can best look further into this knowledge?
Yeah, thank you. So great place to start is our website, thesourcecards.com. You can put your birthday right in the homepage and start there, get your free reading and go from there. We have a whole toolbox of things that you can explore. You can get my book. There, Erasmus is holding it up. Play Your Cards Right, The Sacred Guide to Life on Earth. And explore, dive in, see how it resonates, go with what works for you, see how it helps you, apply it in your life. One of the ways that I often hear people say that they kind of got it or that it clicks for them is that they look up past lovers, they look up their parents, they look up their siblings, they look up people around them, and they're like, oh yeah, that does explain that person's activities, and oh yeah, that is what that person does, and that person does this. So it helps to look other people up, then you start to see what makes people tick, and you get a sense of how these patterns play out, and then use it as a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool, like AI, it's a tool, and we use it with our own level of consciousness to help us live a better life. And what it did for me after all my own spiritual searching through all the different religious traditions is it finally helped me to be at peace with myself, to see my patterns of my life so that I wasn't wrapped up in my own pattern. There was a spaciousness that it gave me to see these patterns for what they are. They're patterns. They're building blocks. They're like crayons or Legos that we have at our disposal, but it's us. We are our own building block. We are our own tool, crayon. We're mixing a lot of metaphors, musical instrument as well. And it's up to us to choose how we want to play this out for ourselves. And that's our choice. We always have free will in how we want to play this game, play this instrument. All that we can do is show what that instrument is, what that tool looks like, what that pattern is. And then with your free will, you have a choice of how to play it. And so the last thing I'll say, and this is kind of my own mantra for me, and I write this whenever I can for people, the best advice I can give is to live your life like it's your favorite game to play.
I love that, man. I love that.
I love it too.
Yeah.
Alexander, man, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. I'm so happy our paths crossed when they did. However long ago it was. And, your book is great. I recommend it to everyone. I recommend your website as well. I think your book is such a great foundational introduction. I prefer it over other ones that I've come across. And I think the way you, lay everything out and you explain the meaning of the cards is really profound. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really
absolutely, man. I find this stuff so interesting. And like self-knowledge period has been such a key part of my journey, whether it's, through any of these systems. So I really just implore people to go discover about themselves. And very often you just get these affirmations of, oh, holy shit, I am here for a reason. I do have a purpose. I do have a unique destiny. And that's really liberating in my opinion. So
100%.
Yeah. Thanks once again. And everyone else, we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you.
And that wraps up today's journey. But hey, the truth train doesn't stop here. Every Friday, we drop little nuggets of wisdom straight to your inbox. We're talking mind-expanding ideas, heart-opening perspectives, and the kind of content that hopefully makes you go, whoa, I never thought of it that way. Our Friday drops like having coffee with that friend who always blows your mind. Except this friend shows up right on schedule and never asks to borrow money. So if you want to join our truth-seeking tribe, it's super easy. Just hop over to hereforthetruth.com/Friday and hit that subscribe button. No spam, no fluff, just pure unfiltered goodness delivered weekly. So if you're ready to make your Fridays a little more truthful, a little more inspiring, and a whole lot more awesome, your future self will thank you for this one. See you next time. And remember, we're always here for the truth and we're always here for you.
Amazing.